We're in Honolulu, Hawaii. Good invitation, huh? We're standing on a terrace overlooking the ancient crater called the Punch Bowl, where the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific spreads out below us. As a Boy Scout who plays trumpet, I've been invited to play taps for the annual Memorial Day ceremony. I stand here alone above those gathered around the graves below, my uniform wilting in the heat, my heart pounding. When the moment comes, I gather breath and play with all of the emotion my 9th grade skills can convey. The notes ring out over the silent participants and witnesses. And in that moment, I realize that I have been given a great gift by being allowed to share in this profound and deeply moving ritual. The echoes are still with me 50 years later. Come with me again. Now we're walking from room to room in an empty house in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I've lived for 6 years with my daughter and wife. It's 9 months now since my wife died. And my daughter and I are leaving Charlotte and the life we've known there for Durham, where I will re-enter seminary at Duke Divinity School in the hope of becoming a Unitarian Universalist minister. I'm carrying a small bundle of sage, and it smokes as I enter each room and stand for a few moments, smudging the space and remembering the events that happened in each of those rooms. I silently give thanks to this house that has hosted us, and I bless each room and bid it farewell as I slowly pass from the back to the front and out the door for the last time. Two very different ceremonies. The first marked an annual national occasion shared with millions of others, living and dead. It's an occasion with a history that has been hallowed by solemn public events since the end of the Civil War, when it was first established in a town in southern Illinois to commemorate both the Union and Confederate soldiers who died in that terrible conflict. The movements, words, and actions of Memorial Day observances have evolved over long communal practice. We honor those who lost their lives in war, those who were willing to take into their own bodies and spirits the moral burdens and the physical consequences of the grim reality that our nation, our human family, has not yet found a way to resolve conflict without war. We place their deaths in the largest possible context as we give reverence both to the personal human values like courage and devotion and to the national values we believe they gave their lives to serve and to preserve. That second ceremony, 23 years ago, was purely private, a personal ritual of grieving and gratitude. There was no prescribed shape, no liturgy of words and movements to follow, just my sense that this was a time to mark. As Max Kutz says, to mark a passage in my life that deserved to be recognized with my full attention and intention. As I remembered and gave thanks and let go of all that took place in those now empty rooms, I placed this moment of my life into a larger context. I gave reverence to the love that lived there, the courage and strength that brought us through difficult times. I recognize, too, that my life, like all our lives, unfolds on a larger canvas, in an ebbing and flowing rhythm of stories and connections that each has its own beginning, middle, and end. Marking and ending opens the way for new beginnings. Religious communities of all kinds take ceremonies seriously. The ritual dinner of the Passover Seder, it's described in the Hebrew Bible. The Christian ritual of the Eucharist or communion is a retelling, a reenactment of Jesus' last meal with his followers. The ancient Maya book called the Popol Vuh makes it clear that the very life of the gods depends on the properly done rituals of human beings. The Bhagavad Gita admonishes its readers, you must perform every action sacramentally if you want to be free of all attachments. Anthropologist Victor Turner writes that rituals and ceremonies are essential to the power of any religion. He says, religion, like art, lives insofar as it is performed. That is, insofar as its rituals are going concerns. If you wish to spay or geld religion, first remove its rituals, its generative and regenerative processes. For religion, he says, is not a cognitive system, a set of dogmas alone. It is meaningful experience and experienced meanings. In ritual, one lives through events. Many modern people find the traditional rituals of familiar religions have lost meaning for them. It is a common experience and complaint of people coming into Unitarian Universalism from other faith traditions that we've become disillusioned with. There's often in our congregations just a bit of suspicion around rituals. We don't want to take them too seriously, and we certainly don't want to repeat them over and over again because we don't want our faith to degenerate into something that we've gotten used to disparaging as going through the motions in other religions. According to D.M. Dooling, who's the publisher and editor of a spiritual publication called Parabola, what makes ceremonies and rituals powerful and necessary is that they place the actions and events of our lives in the largest possible context. Invoking God or Spirit or the sacred or whatever name it is you give to the powers and realities that lie at the very foundation of existence. It is not just what's happening now. It is that what is happening now represents a larger reality and participates in it. In rituals that are meaningful, he says, we call out the larger contexts of family, of community, and the sacred. We recognize their presence or participation in the moments and movements of our own lives. Real help, real blessing can come only when what is real in the human reaches for the highest in themselves and for something higher than themselves. As we've just seen in front of us, this is the season of graduations, from universities all the way down to preschools. And yes, there are ceremonies in the school for preschool graduation. We seem to understand that need to reach for the highest in ourselves and for something higher than ourselves in these moments of transition from school to school for young children, from school into the realities, the larger life of the community for newly minted young adults. We recognize that it's important enough to mark and to share. We recognize that we need to place these moments of their lives into a larger context with them and for them. We're following Max Kutz's admonition, let nothing living slip through the fingers of your mind. We're saying that this moment, at the end of one experience and at the beginning of another, it's important because we're important, because our children are important, because the story and the passages of our lives are important. They deserve recognition. So we make a ritual recognition of all these transitions for children and for young adults, and then we mostly stop. The next life passages we give ceremonies to are the joining of lives in marriage. We know about that one. We've done it 3 times now. Or the birth of a child, or a death. The smaller, more frequent passages of our lives, they usually don't get placed in that largest possible context. They just happen. We have birthday parties, not birthday ceremonies. If my current experience is any indication, we usually celebrate moving from one house to another or one town to another by taking extra naps, because moving is hard. We celebrate anniversaries with a special dinner, a toast, sometimes a gathering of family and friends, but there's usually not an anniversary ritual. I guess as adults, we think it's important to mark the passages and transitions of our children's lives, but that our own somehow don't deserve that kind of attention. Unitarian Universalist minister and author Robert Fulghum agrees with Max Kutz that all of these ordinary passages of our lives deserve to be marked as well. In a book called From Beginning to End, The Rituals of Our Lives, Fulghum defines rituals as repeated patterns that give structure and meaning to our lives. Repeated patterns that give structure and meaning to our lives. He argues that we can find the material for ritual even in the most mundane of activities if we're looking, and that doing so enriches us and deepens our relationship with the sacredness of our own life. He describes a friend who became aware that following a particular routine of actions and reflection in the morning had a significant impact on the quality of her day. And in that description, he takes in everything from how she wakes up, to brushing her teeth, to her breakfast cup of coffee, her first cup of coffee, to the time that she spends on the porch in reflection. This happens when she doesn't have children, by the way. Every step of the way. And she says when she does that, her day is changed. All of it she comes to recognize are a ritual, connecting her to her own best self, keeping her fully present to the moments of her life and to the larger world and universe that she's part of. When she started doing this, when she started describing her morning ritual as a ritual, she found a new sense of peace and centeredness in herself, Fulghum says. It was as if the center of her life had shifted away from outward concerns to the interior condition of life itself. Now, I don't suggest necessarily that you follow the lead of Fulghum's friend Alice, trying to make every moment of your life into a spiritual practice, a conscious spiritual practice. I particularly don't suggest this if you have people under 10 years old living in your house. You don't have time. There will be time. One day, I promise. But not in that moment necessarily. But I wonder, though, if you and I might find ourselves enriched and re-centered by taking the time whenever we can to mark the smaller passages that are part of everyday life. As Max Kutz says, when anniversaries arrive by calendar or by consciousness. A birthday could be a time, a good time to craft a simple ceremony for yourself or to share with a few others. A time to reflect on the year that's passed and the year to come, and to place this moment of transition into a larger context. What are you grateful for as you move into the next year of your life? Where have you felt the source of life and love moving in and around you this year? What are the deepest, most penetrating voices of your life calling you toward now? Significant changes or anniversaries in your work life can be marked in similar ways. So can friendships, old and new, or more intimate relationships. Moments when you feel yourself confronted by fear, or times when you realize that you have been doing something that is difficult. Those are fertile ground for invoking the power of ritual. In situations like that, it can be especially valuable to remind ourselves that we live our whole lives in the larger context of an abiding, sustaining presence of love and creativity that will never desert us. And to give ourselves time to feel that presence in this moment, within us and around us. I can't help but mention that you all are approaching a pretty significant passage in the life of your congregation just a week from now. I know, because I've heard and seen the book, that you have already taken good steps to mark the time. And I hope you will continue to find both shared and private ways to experience and acknowledge all of the gratitudes, all of the losses, the memories, and the new possibilities that a change in your ministry brings. Mark the time. Light a candle. Arrange a few flowers. Take mindful sips of tea or of something more encouraging and celebratory if you like. Ask yourself questions. Listen to your own answers to them. Share thoughts with someone you love, someone you trust. Remind yourself that you are good, you are loved, and you can always choose to be part of a larger power of love and compassion and creativity in this world. Let nothing living slip through the fingers of your mind. Our faith teaches that our own everyday experience is a sacred text where the meanings of life can be discovered. We know that the source of all that is holy lives within us and among us, as well as beyond us all. May we remember that our lives are filled with moments when something sacred is sensed in soil or sky. May we take the time to help ourselves and each other to notice and mark each holy moment. So may it be. So let's sing one more time. We'll rise in body or spirit and sing our closing hymn. It's number 1026 in the